Om Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantamana Petyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putre Titam Mayatayo Tarvo Vinedustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatosmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karma Ditarangamadye Kripa Mahitvam Sharanam Prapana Prinde Namaste Charanaravindam. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishna Om Astotar Sarshi Srimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times, unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Leela Pravishna Om Astotar Sarshi Srimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. And all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So, we're continuing with our appreciation of the Bhagavatam. And for me, thank you. Wow. For me, it's been very helpful to speak in this way. I've never gone before so consistently through. It's very helpful for me to get a picture, and I hope it is for you also. So we've been rolling through the first canto and trying to see the thread of devotion, understanding from the beginning that bhakti sar, is the essence throughout the Bhagavatam. And then we've been looking at all the different chapters carefully. And I was thinking today how, if you ever get a chance to read the Sandarbhas or just all the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's making constant reference throughout to all the other parts of the Bhagavatam. It's like with Jiva Goswami in particular, he's like the emperor of the Bhagavatam in his Sandarbhas. Gurudev said one time that everything that he knows, all his knowledge, has come from the Sandarbhas. He said different things at different times, but one time he was sitting in Mathura and someone asked him, where is all this information, knowledge? And he said, I got all my understanding from the Sandarbhas. But one amazing thing about the Sandarbhas, beside the actual content of the knowledge, is the expertise and way that Jiva Goswami just runs up and down the Bhagavatam constantly, like in every Anuchetya it's called, right? Anucheda. Every verse, he's bringing in verses from the first canto, from the fourth canto, from the 10th canto, and you can see he's got the Bhagavatam in his hand. It's really inspiring for us devotees, because initially, as we said, it seems like a large, voluminous body of literature, 12 cantos. Many devotees become so intimidated by it, they never even open it, even though it's everything for us. It's the entirety of all our knowledge about Krishna in this age. It's described that prior to the departure of Lord Krishna, there was no need for any written Shastra. There was just oral reception. The guru would speak and the disciple would hear, that disciple would speak to his disciple, etc., etc. There was no need for this, but with the departure of Krishna and the entrance of Kali, all simultaneously, then immediately this Bhagavatam manifested, all at the same time. Krishna left, Kali came, Bhagavatam was manifested. All three happened. So Krishna carries his form as the Bhagavatam. So to feel comfortable and to know up and down like this is what we've sort of been approaching these last few days, especially in relationship to the first canto. So we've understood the first chapter is about the questions, the second is the Sutta Goswami answering the questions. If I repeat this every day, I'll get to know it, and perhaps you will get to know it also. These 19 chapters, because there is a flow and consistency to them. So the first chapter, the sages, and now we're understanding also at this point that these sages have been described as Sakam Karma Yogis. Because now it's going to be very interesting that we touch on the second canto, and already a lot of that material desire has been purified in their hearts. They're no longer wanting to hear about mystic perfections, etc., in the way that they're asking Sutta Goswami the questions. So it's very interesting to see just here in front of us this, especially when we come to the chapter Change of Heart, which is the third chapter in this second canto. You see, whose change of heart? It's the sages' change of heart. They've already experienced a change of heart just by the words from Sutta Goswami describing Parikshit Maharaj. So in the first chapter, the sages are asking those questions. And in particular, they ask 6 specific questions that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes. And then Sutta Goswami, he answers. And then the third chapter it starts off by Sutta Goswami describing the Virata Rupa. Now this is interesting because Shukadev Goswami, he also describes the Virata Rupa straight away when he starts talking to Parikshit Maharaj in this second canto. And then, within this second canto, he quotes the conversation between Narad and Brahmaji. Narad is inquiring from Lord Brahma about the creation. And the first thing that Lord Brahma describes is the Virata Rupa form also. So 3 times you get it through here, even though it's described in the translations that this Virata Rupa is actually for the neophyte devotees to make this imaginary picture of Krishna. It's not so personal. It's like halfway between impersonal, the Brahmajyoti light, and the personal aspect, because very quickly Shukadev Goswami goes on in the second chapter of the second canto to describe the Lord in the heart. So this is Paramatma, this is Supersoul. So it's a progression. We see how it's moving along. So in that third chapter, that's described straight away. It's also described about Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Karanodakshai Vishnu, Kshirodakshai Vishnu, the creation. It's like summed up by Sutta Goswami initially. This aspect of creation is going to be described a number of times through the Bhagavatam. Now understand that these first 9 cantos are called Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha means relationship. So all of these topics are allowing us to understand the nature of the material energy, what is our relationship with that material energy, and who is the Supreme Lord. So these 3 aspects of relationship, understanding who am I, who is the jiva, and we discussed this yesterday to some degree right at the very end, our position in Tatashta, etc., coming into this world. And then, who is Krishna, that Supreme Lord, and this is what's being unfolded here in the pages, and what is the nature of the material energy. So these 3 aspects, these 3 vastus, and what is their relationship with each other. This is Sambandha Gyan, this understanding Krishna, understanding myself in relationship to Krishna, and understanding the material energy. This is all collectively called Sambandha. And then, of course, the 10th canto is the Prayojan, the beautiful smiling face of the Lord. And then the 11th canto, and part of the 12th, is accessing the Abhideya Tattva, how to access that 10th canto. So this is the, the thread throughout the Bhagavatam. So when we talk about it this way, it starts to, in a sense, collect it in the palm of our hands, so we can see how it's unfolding, then all the various pastimes within. Actually, next year, because I know that we're not going to reach more than the second canto, we may just touch the third canto. But next year we should go in the same detail in the third and fourth and fifth cantos perhaps, and then the sixth and seventh and eighth. And then we will start to capture, that, of course the essence is Bhakti Devi, but what are all the details that are giving us entrance into that world, that kingdom of devotion? How to inspire that within the heart. So, and then we've described in the fourth, fifth, and sixth chapter is the most essential Guru Tattva. This conversation between Narad and Vyas, and the identity of Vyasadeva, the identity of Narad, how Narad is describing his previous birth, etc. So this is beautifully described in those 3 chapters is given straight away to this. And then after that, that story of Ashwatthama, the son of Drona, punished. And then after this, the prayers of Queen Kunti and the birth of Parikshit. Then after this, the instructions and teachings of Bhishma Dev. Then after this, it's the birth of Parikshit, I think. You're looking at me quizzically. I had to check. I'm trying to learn all this. No, you were right. I'm glad you looked at me like that. Yeah, so it's the departure of Krishna from Hastinapur, his beautiful relationships with the Pandavas, and then it's the chapter after that is his entrance into Dwarka. So these are very personal relationships that we've described already in quite detail. Then there's the birth of Parikshit and that beautiful pastime of Uttara, etc. And then there's 3 chapters about departure. There's Dhritarashtra's departure from this world, then there's Krishna's departure from this world, then there's the Pandavas' departure from this world. So this is in chapter 12, 13, 14. 13, 14 and 15. 13, 14 and 15 are about the departure of these personalities, particularly Krishna's departure. Then the Pandavas depart. So, and then there's 4 chapters about Parikshit Maharaj, and 2 about him chastising Kali, and 1 about his curse. So this is the thread of the first chapter. So talking about it briefly like this, like each day, we can just make a synopsis, and each day it'll get more embedded in our hard drives, so we have a picture of it. So we can deliver this to other people in a consistent way, because as we make any sort of progress in devotional service, we want to please Krishna, and Krishna is demonstrating his own compassion in this world. So what to speak of the devotee desiring to share whatever knowledge he has or inspiration he has from this Bhagavatam with others, to encourage them also into these pages. So that's like the first chapter, 19 chapters, the first canto rather, 19 chapters. So now we're moving into the second canto, and yesterday we began that second canto and we read through something of the first verse, first chapter, and this chapter is described as the first step in God realization. That's the title of the chapter. And again, as I've said already today, that Shukadeva Goswami, he begins to describe the Virata Rupa form. Before he describes that, because he's addressing these yogis, and some of them still have material desires. So he's speaking about material detachment. Initially, he's speaking about the karmis, those fruitive workers who are just involved in their family lives and have no time even to inquire after Atma Tattva. So like Shukadeva Goswami really starts at the very beginning, before he moves into anything higher. He's addressing those in front of him. He's looking at those in front of him. He's alive. He's seeing who is in front of me. And then he's addressing those sages in that way. And then he begins to speak the Virata Rupa form. And that goes on for 11 verses, actually, in the first chapter. So that's quite extensive description. He goes through the arms, the legs, etc., all being Krishna. So we discussed something of that yesterday. So I want to jump today to the second chapter, okay, of the second canto. This is where we're up to. So have you got an idea of the first chapter of the second canto? A little bit. Should I read more about it? Basically, it's the entrance of Shukadeva Goswami and his talking directly to the yogis in front of him, talking directly to even karmis is what it's termed as initially, and then he begins to describe this Virata Rupa form. I'll read you 1 or 2 verses here, because I don't know if we're all... O king, he's describing to Parikshit. This is from the first chapter now. By this system of remembrance, this is according to the Virata Rupa form. By this system of remembrance and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good personal conception of the Lord, one can very soon attain devotional service to the Lord under his direct shelter. So he's qualifying the reason why he's giving this Virata Rupa, so that we can fix a personal conception of the Lord. I described, I think yesterday or the day before, how in my own life I was very impersonal initially. And I described yesterday the reasons why so many people are impersonal rather than personal, because we've come from an impersonal conception. We've come from the Tatastha. We haven't come from Krishna, from that personal world. So many of us have this inability to immediately grasp the personal aspect of the Lord. So Shukadeva Goswami is very mercifully building a platform for that in this first chapter, the first step in God realization. I used to be quite intimidated at this second canto, actually. I don't know about any of you, but the second canto always seemed to be very heavy. You know, the third canto has far more pastimes in it, but I always felt the second canto was very heavy, you know, and difficult. I was a little bit intimidated by it. But actually trying to go deeper into it, I'm starting to see its simplicity and it's how it evolves. And it makes it more simple for me to appreciate it more deeply, seeing how it evolves like this. So then he's talking about this gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the absolute truth, wherein the universal resultant past, present and future of material time is experienced. Just the language alone is so profound and pleasing to the ear. It's so rich with maturity. It's so much coming from another dimension. These words are described as the Samadhi Bhastya of Vyasadeva. He's seeing in Samadhi when he's compiling this, when he's writing this. And it's described as a Purushaya. It's not written by man. It's written, it's empowered by that divine abode of Krishna directly. It's not a man-made scripture. This is why it's so appealing and so sweet to the heart, in any part of it, in any part of the fruit. Of course, the mature devotee has already accessed the 10th canto. He's already bubbling with enthusiasm just to drink the sweet pastimes between Krishna and the gopis. He already wants that. And now he's experiencing, he's seeing how everything is leading very simply to that place. It's evolving to that place on a very solid platform. If we do try and jump, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada describes in one of the commentaries here at the end of this chapter, actually, this first chapter, how that if we try and jump, how difficult it will become, and how these just these sentiments will prevail rather than a strong platform of tattva. If that atma tattva is not strong, then the various rasik sentiments won't have a foundation, and it will come out in an imitational type of a way. Because actually we have to go very deep to appreciate rasa tattva. We have all here been exposed to the teachings of our Gurudev, who gave so liberally these highest rasic truths. But to enter into those rasic truths, we must be grounded in these truths also. It's not that these truths should ever begin to submerge those rasic, sweet pastimes, but they complement and they make a stepping stone to reach there very easily for us. After just describing a little bit of this first chapter, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, should I describe more of it? I'll describe a couple of verses more. I don't sense that you all feel confident with this first chapter, maybe. It's just me, but anyway. Okay, in one verse, this is verse 31, he's saying, they say that the Vedic hymns are the cerebral passage of the Lord, and his jaws of teeth are Yama, god of death, who punishes the sinners. The art of affection is his set of teeth, and the most alluring, illusory material energy is his smile. This great ocean of material creation is but the casting of his glance over us. So it's coming from a very, very lofty, transcendental perspective of that supreme, all-encompassing, supreme Lord. So these are the descriptions. He says, the rivers are the veins of the gigantic body, the trees are the hairs of his body, and the omnipotent air is his breath. The passing ages are his movements, and his activities are the reaction of the three modes of material nature. So there's many verses of this nature in this first chapter, describing the greatness of Krishna. This is even more than Aishwarya. This is so much greatness, but it's Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Radha Gopinath Ju Ki Jai. But it's giving us a gradual entrance. And now in the second chapter, Shukadeva Goswami focuses on the Paramatma in the heart. So again, it's not what the hungry devotee for Braja Prem is seeking. Nevertheless, it's showing us the immensity of knowledge that is available about every single aspect of spiritual reality. So now, I think we went a little bit yesterday. We read a couple of verses yesterday. And I want to read some verses from this second chapter. This second chapter, actually the whole dialogue given by Shukadeva Goswami is an expression of his compassion towards Parikshit, towards the sages. He's realized in this knowledge and he's speaking it very beautifully for the happiness of those sages. So, I'll read from text 2. The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of people to meaningless things like heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly, illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. In other words, he's saying, what is matter and what is spirit? when we are in a conditioned state, the nature of the soul naturally wants to be happy. If we're not realized, we're going to be looking for material happiness, because we have to be happy one way or another, materially or spiritually. When we're in between, it gets really difficult. And this is often the place of the advancing devotee. He comes to a middle place where he knows there's no pleasure in the material world, and he's not really getting such a taste from the spiritual world. But if he has intelligence and guidance and education, he'll go towards that spiritual realm. He'll hear about it and learn about it and practice the sadhana to achieve realization of that spiritual consciousness. Now, he goes more clearly. For this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life, while in the world of names. So now he's showing externally how to become detached from the things of this world. There are many beautiful verses here. I'm sure you've all heard them many times, we'll hear them again. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. We work so hard to achieve what? We have to see this in the lives of the materialist. We've already experienced it in our own lives, and perhaps we've discarded it. But now feel some compassion for those illusion-conditioned souls who don't see this. How can we translate this language into something that they can digest? It's like Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. His genius was the ability to take that highest conception and translate it into something that was digestible for barbarians. That is that really demonstrates love. He loved so much that he made those devotees cry regularly. For him, it was Prabhupada consciousness. But who was Prabhupada? If you talk to any old Prabhupada disciple, they will tell you again and again just how much they loved him. It seems that it's not directly about Krishna in a sense, but what was the instructions of Prabhupada? Many of them need to be reminded of these instructions, actually. Our Gurudev was very much balancing with this. Our Gurudev, however much we focused on him, he would always give us such a wealth of understanding and knowledge and jnana about Krishna in so many areas. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Leela, etc., Bhagavatam, pastimes, Jaiva Dharma. What didn't he give us such a huge amount? Now, these are very beautiful verses where he's showing an opportunity to easily become detached from everything in the material world. He says, when there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use his own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow? When one can use the palms of his hands, what is the necessity of varieties of utensils? When there is ample covering or the skins of trees, what is the necessity of clothing? It's pretty radical. But at the same time, the point is there. If any of you were hippies in your younger years, we would relate to these things very easily, you know. But at the same time, he's saying, you know, we can become completely, not detached, there's no taste for these material comforts. Are there no torn cloths lying on the common road? Someone might object. Or what about wintertime? I can't just be wearing rough skins of trees in wintertime. Are there no torn cloths on the common road? We see here there are so many cloths. Do the trees which exist for maintaining others no longer give alms in charity? In other words, don't they give fruits? Actually, they don't give many fruits now. It's shade. They give some shade, yes. And they give some warmth. Actually, if you stand underneath a tree and it's freezing, sometimes it keeps the fog and the mist away. Do the rivers, being dried up, no longer supply water to the thirsty? Are the rivers entirely polluted? Pretty much they are, you know. You have to hunt around to find an unpolluted river these days. Are the caves of the mountains now closed? In other words, if you're complaining you want a thatched house, and you can't get your structure together, well, what about the caves? Are there no longer caves? Traditionally, the yogis would meditate in caves because there was never much air, so you'd have to sit down all the time. It has a different sort of dynamic with the breathing, with the air in a cave. Or above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? This is the point. Does Krishna not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why do we have to be so concerned with these things? Why do we have to have these various insecurities? We have emotional insecurities and we have material insecurities. All of us practically have some type of insecurities in this age if we're not fully connecting with the mercy of the Lord and realizing that His mercy is unlimited. There's no need for any sort of insecurity in any way. So Shukadeva Goswami is giving the extreme example of all this. Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? We see in some spiritual institutions they're so concerned for all their wealth and so on. They're building projects, and many times they're forgetting about Krishna. We see the example of many practitioners. They get caught up in the passion of serving the institution. And then we see 10, 15 years, even 20 years later, they have developed no taste for chanting, no taste for hearing, and what is the result? They go back into the material whirlpool. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes the lowest sort of man is a narrow dhamma. He describes this in Bhagavad Gita. The lowest sort of man is that person who's come to the path of bhakti and then turns back again. That is the most condemned person. All those millions of births, and he's finally developed Sukriti and Adhikar to approach Bhakti Devi, and then he turns around and leaves. This is the most stupid, unfortunate person to have that happen. Thus being fixed, one must render service unto the Supersoul situated in one's own heart by His omnipotency. Because He is the Almighty Personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited, He is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshipping Him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. So now, in this chapter, it's titled, Lord in the Heart. Now he goes on to describe in very beautiful descriptions of Krishna within the heart. This is Supersoul. This manifestation is not eternal. It's described again in Bhagavad Gita. This manifestation of Supersoul, Paramatma, is not eternal. When Kshirodakshai Vishnu goes back into the body of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, back into the body of Karanadakshay Vishnu, where is the Supersoul? Where is the Supersoul's function? It doesn't exist anymore. So it's a temporary manifestation. Nevertheless, it still is a living reality for the Jiva. He's still there, Supersoul. And now Shukadeva Goswami is going to describe this Supersoul. He describes, others conceive of the personality of Godhead residing within the body of the region of the heart and measuring only 8 inches, with 4 hands carrying a lotus, a wheel of a chariot, and a conch shell and a club, respectively. His mouth expresses his happiness. His eyes spread like the petals of a lotus, and his garments, yellowish like the saffron of the kadamba flower, are bedecked with valuable jewels. His ornaments are all made of gold with jewels, set with jewels, and he wears a glowing headdress and earrings. His lotus feet are placed over the halls of the lotus-like hearts of great mystics. You see, he's saying all this because the yogis in front of him are of this mentality. They are yogis. Initially, we described already, they were Sakankara yogis. Some of them are mystics. They want this super-soul realization. For the developed, mature bhakta, he's not so interested in this. But nevertheless, it's there in the world. When we are speaking in the world at large, we should appreciate many people's desires about spiritual practice is to attain mystical perfections. This is the way to attain mystical perfections. If you take shelter of Antaryami, of the Supersoul in the heart, then all these mystic perfections can be developed. But the expertise of the devotee is to purify those material ambitions of the non-bhakta, of the person who is not wanting to come to Braja, is not wanting to come to this conception. So we should be knowledgeable and empathic of all these different varieties of personalities. He is well decorated with an ornamental... I mean, why is Shukadeva Goswami saying this? He's saying this out of his compassion. And we've been given this body of literature, we've been given this incarnation of Krishna, so every lesson we should take and digest. Nothing should be discarded. We don't read this and say, oh, let's quickly jump to the 10th canto, forget all this. This has its relevance. Of course it has its relevance. Gurudev translated also himself. He made commentaries on this 2nd canto. They haven't been translated yet into English, but he himself has made comment, and he was the most rasik of personalities. Nevertheless, he still, for the sake of the conditioned souls, he went through these chapters. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indications of his extensive benedictions. One must therefore concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord as long as the mind can be fixed on him by meditation. Now, one very important point I want to share with you, because previously I thought, as do quite a number of other devotees that I've met, that actually you have to go through Paramatma realization first. And I directly asked Gurudev, do we need to have this? Because I was interested, like many of us who are in mystic sort of, phantasmagoria, etc., etc., etc. Where have we come from in our previous births? What sort of practice were we doing to reach this stage now? So that place of interest in those areas needs to be purified. So I asked Gurudev directly. I can remember clearly he was standing in front of what is now, I think it's Dvija's room in Mathura. It used to be his bathroom. There was 2 doors. One was his living space in Mathura, and next door was his bathroom. Standing in front of there, and I asked him, and he jumped and he grabbed my shoulders and he said, never! Very, 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 very strongly. This is not the path. If you get sunk into Paramatma realization, why should you ever want to leave? All of a sudden, all the lights will go on. Wow! You'll feel it's wonderful. You'll never want to come out of there. Why should you? You'll be liberated. You'll have all these mystic perfections. You'll think, yes, now I am enlightened. But you will have been cheated. We will have been cheated of the real sweetness, the real beauty, the sweetness of devotion to that Brajendranandan Shri Krishna as the gopis possess it. How tragic to be, defeated by that ambition for mystic perfections. It's a big thing that I'm talking about. You have to look deeply within ourselves and appreciate this, because it's the nature of the conditioned consciousness to want some power. It's part of the conditioning to be like Krishna, to be controlling, etc. And the idea of mystic perfections. I mean, if you have any sort of mystic ability today, you become famous immediately, and people are attracted to that place. Someone may be an amazing musician or singer or something like that, and then they just capitalize on it completely and completely become bewildered by the various adoration, that comes from the material society. You lose it. You lose the plot fully. We see. You lose even the desire for devotion. Our desire is devotion to Sri Krishna, as the gopis performed their devotion to Krishna. This is our desire. We are Gopi Bhav, Gopi Anugatya. We are following in the footsteps. All of our parampara, they have all revealed their identity as maidservants of Sri Radha. This is our goal, this devotion. Nevertheless, Shukadeva Goswami is describing about Paramatma. It's not that we should be so attracted, but for the Bhakta, he's so happy to read about the beautiful smiling face of Krishna, to read about his soft lotus feet, to read about his sweet smile. This is all very attractive for us, but nevertheless the actual purpose that Shukadeva Goswami is giving this for, he's giving it like in a step to these yogis and sages, because very quickly in the following chapters, the chapter after this, it's called Pure Devotional Service. The dynamic changes, but we go through this. So this is the structure of this second canto. And then he talks a lot about yoga here. It's also describing that this knowledge is of a scientific nature. And let me just get to this part to read you. Prabhupada is talking in his commentary very much about the scientific presentation of this Bhagavatam. So I think in some sense we're looking at it from that point of view. That's the point of view I wanted to look at it from. I wanted to see it in an analytical way to give us more of an insight into its flow, its current. I've said this from the very beginning. I'm not trying to explain the level of bhakti within it, but I'm just trying to point out where the current of that bhakti is. Shukadeva Goswami carries on halfway through this same chapter. He says, however, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments, like transference to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the eightfold perfections, travel in outer space with the Vyahayas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away with him the materially molded mind and senses. Perhaps you remember, I know the first book I ever read on devotional service was called Easy Journey to Other Planets, and it had a yogi on the front going to all these planets. It was really attractive to me at that time. So think in that sort of context, why is Sukadeva Goswami presenting this? He's presenting it because it's the prelude to where he's going to reach, ultimately, which will be the 10th canto. His heart is throbbing. He can't even say the name Radha without going into a state as described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur for several weeks. He would not be able to speak if he just says the name Radha. So this is who he is. This is this personality, who he is. So the transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body as such by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge. Their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers or the gross materialists can never move in such an unrestricted manner. So he's saying putting the emphasis on leave this any sort of material consideration and move into that spiritual place. But it's still related to the material worlds and the material planetary systems where the yogi can reach to. He's saying in the next translation, O king, when such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Shushumna to reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka. He goes first to Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and therefore he still goes higher in the circle of Shushumna to relate with Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. But he's still in these planetary systems, and it's describing so much about the amounts of time and that he can reach even Satyaloka. Again, this is being focused on to the yogis and so on. This is what this chapter is really about. It's about scientifically approaching a method through pranayama, meditation, etc., where you can become liberated from this material world and you can travel to higher planets, planetary systems, but they're not eternal planetary systems. But these amazing personalities do exist in this universe. So now Shukadeva Goswami is giving us an insight into these personalities, and by talking about them very authoritatively, we can purify ourselves of any desire to go there. He's talking about here the time frame of a devotee. It's described that the duration of life in Satyaloka is calculated to be 15 trillion, 480 billion years. That's the life duration of Satyaloka. Lord Brahma's life, what's Lord Brahma's lifespan? Does anyone know? A lot. Okay, we'll go on from here. Okay, it's a lot, big figures. Yeah. But the idea is that they're calculations, and it's showing scientifically how you can achieve these states of consciousness by meditation on the Supersoul. But you don't break out of the universe. It's exactly as Gurudev said. You don't need to have this Paramatma realization. It's not part of our process to sit and meditate and to achieve that state of consciousness on Supersoul. That's not the purpose of the Bhakta. He's saying, Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas. It is the eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So he's giving the reference for his knowledge, what he's saying. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. So there are many types of devotional service. We read throughout the scripture with what mood, what bhav we are performing devotional service, and what is our goal. So here it's describing Supersoul in all this chapter. He's saying here, O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. So this is now like all-pervasive, so to speak. He's giving the summum bonum, even though it's amongst this chapter on meditating on Paramatma, on Supersoul. He's still putting in this sweetness. You understand? Nothing is lacking. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life, known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Then there's an interesting part in Bhaktivedanta Swami's commentary here. He says the sufferings of human society are due to a polluted aim of life, namely lording it over the material resources. So this is what this chapter has been addressing. If you want to be a yogi and you want to realize Paramatma, these are the amazing mystic perfections you can attain. You can go to these higher planetary systems for trillions of years. But actually, what is the real benefit of that? Ultimately, we need to be guided through this Bhagavatam by Sadguru, unless we have pure Guru who has tasted the elixir of devotional service to Sri Radha, to the Brijabasis, to Vrindavan, to Brajendranath, then he can impart that sweetness of understanding within these instructions. We need to hear that. It's like many times people will say, oh, Prabhupada has given everything in his books. Yes, he has. But how much do we understand of what he's given us? We need the light of Shiksha to actually understand what he's given. And the same with Gurudev also. He has given abundance of teachings. And he's given so much Shiksha on Prabhupada. But at some point we hope that someone will come and speak very beautifully on the teachings of our Gurudev and explain more clearly what he was saying. We see, for example, I've said a number of times about Gurudev describing what Prabhupada's words are in the 4th verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Anapita chirim chirat karunaivarjino kalo samaravaitam unnata ujjvala rasam swa bhakti shriyam. Prabhupada translates shriyam as treasure. That's his translation for treasure. But what is the meaning of the treasure? How do we know what is the treasure? It was by the light of Shiksha Guru that he explained this treasure is actually Manjari Bhav. Now Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada doesn't even mention Manjari practically in all of his books. If you go into this folio program and you type in Manjari, you get one reference. And that's in Upadeshamrita in the 11th verse. It's the only reference to Manjari in all of Prabhupada's books, because that was not the purpose of his teaching. The purpose of his teaching was to bring us out of the material swamp and situate us just in a human-like consciousness. And from that position, we could be trained and enlightened and inspired towards the highest conception of personal relationship with Sri Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. So each Acharya, they have their purpose. Nothing should be minimized at all. We should glorify those teachings that had the ability to crack through that crust where we were totally embedded in material vision and desires and so on. And by his unfolding the Bhagavatam, then he gives us this clear path, this step-by-step path. He's describing in the beginning of this 3rd chapter. Now this 3rd chapter is called Pure Devotional Service, the change of heart. So the change of heart is actually going to be demonstrated by the sages themselves. The sages in this chapter, for 11 verses, begin just to glorify Krishna. It's very beautiful. There's 11 verses here. From verse 14. I'm just going to skip a little bit and go straight to this, just to hear. So this is the change of heart. They're talking to Sutta Goswami. They've become somewhat eager, anxious to hear about Krishna directly. They've heard about the Virata Rupa. They've heard about the Super Soul. Now they want more. Some greed has come in their hearts. They say, "O learned Sutta Goswami, please continue to explain such topics to us, because we are all eager to hear. Besides that, topics which result in the discussions of Lord Hari should certainly be discussed in the assembly of devotees. Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Krishna by imitating the worship of the family deity. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, was also full of transcendental knowledge and was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva. So there must have been discussions of Lord Krishna, who is glorified by great philosophers and in the company of great devotees. Both by the rising and setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Very beautiful verse. This is time, is just getting away on us. It's rolling through the rising and the setting. Our duration decreases. Do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us do the beasts not eat and discharge semen? In other words, the life of a tree is nothing compared to the life of a human being. In a human being, the life of a tree is described as achadita chetana. Its consciousness is so much covered. But the life in a human form is open to actually understanding who is Krishna and who am I and what is the relationship between the two. In the form of a tree or an animal, we cannot even ask those questions. He says, do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? Are we just breathing vegetables, in other words? The blacksmith's bellows, they breathe. Are we breathing? What are we actually, how are we increasing the value of our lives? By inquiring and glorifying about Krishna. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So this is what we see, men who are like that, they glorify. There's an expression that 2 million drunks are not necessarily right. If it's the opinion of 2 million drunks, it doesn't make it right. So public opinion is not necessarily to be supported. There's another expression that what's the point in trying to be a balanced individual in a totally dysfunctional society? We try so hard to sort of walk like normally and have everyone think, yes, he's a very good person, but what is the perspective of that, or what is the, platform for that, being a good... if someone doesn't know about Krishna, doesn't know about transcendence, their opinion is practically zero. They cultivate good qualities for what purpose? So that people actually think that they're very good people. Oh, again, I'm God. I'm like God. I'm so good. People are all patting me on the back. That was what I thought all along. This is the illusion conditioned consciousness. Anyway, you all know these thoughts. You have your own understanding. These are general. One who has not listened to the messages about... These are the sages who are talking to Sutta Goswami. We've watched the sages' consciousnesses mature to this point. So far, this conversation probably would have taken like half a day when they're sitting on the bank of the Ganges talking to Parikshit Maharaj, or talking to Sutta Goswami rather, in Naimisharanya. And they've already had their hearts changed. This is the title of this chapter. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes, and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Very graphic. It's very clear. This is the deplorable condition of the conditioned soul. What does the soft-hearted devotee want to do towards helping those people? He's saying now, this is a beautiful word, the upper portion of the body, though covered with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj quotes many beautiful verses about this also. Like if that decorated head is not bound, is not bowing, what is its value? Who can award mukti, freedom, and the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead. They are still not knowing the full aspect of the 10th canto. So the idea of mukti is still an attractive carrot for them, because Sukadeva Goswami has not enlightened them on that yet. But all of this canto and the ones, the next ones to come, they're all glorifying Krishna. So we're making a very solid platform of that Aishwarya aspect of Krishna. Actually, Aishwarya Gyan is like a fresh mountain stream for the consciousness, for stabilizing our focus. And then when it's purified to its highest degree and we come to appreciate the sweetness of Krishna's relationships that are described in the 10th canto between the gopis and Krishna, then our hearts melt very easily, because then all the various anarthas and contaminations will have been washed away by that current of Aishwarya, of appreciating the sweetness of Krishna, the potency of Krishna, the power of Krishna. If we just sit in the 10th canto, it's like drinking lots and lots of sweet rice. We won't be able to digest it. We need to have that balance initially. Those eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his form, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of a peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. So we remember the beautiful verses of Venugita, where the gopis are saying those eyes that do not see the beautiful forms of Krishna and Balaram entering the beautiful forest of Vrindavan, accompanied by the sound of his flute and all his cowherd boys, those eyes are useless. So that's taking that same verse but to its highest degree. These are the sages who are speaking. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. They're appreciating the compassion, the greatness of a pure devotee. The pure devotee can literally change the heart of a soul. He can sprinkle the dust from his instructions and glances into our hearts physically. Without that physical exchange, it cannot change the heart. If we just read about it, it's not going to change. You actually have to see the pure devotee walking. If you've never seen a pure devotee, then we should be greatly lamenting for that day and praying, crying for Krishna to reveal that glance of the pure devotee only has to glance at you once for a millionth of a second for us to know the reality of the spiritual world. Just one time he has to look at it, and then immediately we know, absolutely assured of the reality of that spiritual world. I've said many times, like, if you've never seen a ghost, you don't quite believe in them. But if you've seen them once, then you know it exists. You know it's a reality. Similarly with the Mahabhagavat, if you see that look of another world, that look of transcendence, it's nothing that we can read about. It's a reality. What's that? Rajaviji Rajaguyam Pavitramataman Pratyakshavagaman Dharmyam. By direct perception, the devotee perceives this. This is the power of the Mahabhagavat, and the sages now are glorifying this. They're seeing that light in Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami has sat in the assembly with Shukadeva Goswami and Narad and Vyasadeva and so many other great sages, but he also heard with his ears Shukadeva Goswami's instructions to Parikshit. So he is radiant with potency. So in that association with Sutta Goswami, they're catching Shukadeva Goswami. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. So, these are very beautiful prayers of glorification. One more. Certainly that heart is steel-framed, which in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end. Very beautiful, famous verse, this verse. So see the context of this verse now. This is the sages, their hearts are melting. They're hearing these words from Sutta Goswami. Their eagerness and enthusiasm has really arisen. And they want to hear now more and more about Krishna. They're not satisfied with the Virata Rupa. They're not satisfied with Paramatma. They actually want something now more direct. So this prayer for pure devotional service is rising in their heart. I'll read one more verse because it's so beautiful. O Sutta Goswami, your words are pleasing to our minds. Please therefore explain to us, as it was spoken by the great devotee Shukadev Goswami, who was very expert in transcendental knowledge and who spoke to Maharaj Parikshit upon being asked. So now the next chapter, we can go into tomorrow, is the process of creation. So the process of creation again is the scientific appreciation of where I am in this material atmosphere, how I'm sitting here, what is the nature of this world around me. When I start to understand that, then I can understand where that nature has manifested from. Who is that supreme control? It takes a long time. It's like we're really covered over with so many layers. It needs to really plumb down. Who is that Supreme Master? Because this little anartha keeps jumping up. Oh, well, maybe I am. Maybe I am the Supreme. It keeps just all the time, just popping up. You said yesterday about this Tatashta. That's what it is. We're walking in the middle of this Tatashta. And this Tatashta is all of a sudden, I think, oh, actually, I am the controller. You know, I am the one who's responsible for getting this, doing that, right? I'm the one responsible for the maintaining of Gopinath Bhavan. We can't help but think that. But we have to think like this. We're always thinking this. We can't help ourselves, you know? It just jumps out. So how thick are these layers? Huh? Yes. So this next chapter is about the creation, to kind of shrink us down a little bit and realize that we're just so insignificant, that actually Krishna is the entire master and creator. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gold Print Devi Haribol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,